Call this meeting of Personnel and Animal Welfare Committee to order. Myself and Mr. John Lee present. So we have a quorum, and we will begin with public comment. The first speaker will be Mr. Herman on all items. You'll have 2 minutes on all the combined items, plus 1 minute of general public comment. He's not present, so we will skip him for now. Ms. Jessie Norman, not present. Ms. Wendy Birch. Ms. Luna M. Are there others that So none of the people we called under general public comment are present. So I guess we're going to close general public comment then. And then I would ask, and Mr. Price is also present, I'd ask that we take item 3 through 7 on consent. Without objection?
Objections.
Okay, and then we will begin with item number 1.
Item 1, communication from the Mayor and City Ethics Commission report relative to the appointment of Ms. Carla M. Gould to the Civil Service Commission for the term ending June 30th, 2022.
And by the way, for the record, general public comment is closed. So do we have Ms. Gould present? Or a representative?
Director of the Civil Service Commission. Ms. Gould is in the building, but she's not quite on the floor.
Okay, so we will hold item number 1 and hope that she arrives timely. Thank you. Item number 2.
Item 2, communication from the Mayor and City Ethics Commission report relative to the reappointment of Mr. Douglas Collins to the Employee Relations Board for the term ending September 23rd, 2024.
Well, welcome.
Good afternoon.
So what do you hope to accomplish during your second tour of duty on the board?
I hope to survive it. This will be my third tour of duty. Yeah.
Beyond that, I hope you have some plans.
Well, yes, we're actually working now on rewriting the board's rules and regulations and making some proposed amendments to the Employee Relations Ordinance itself. In part to get it more in conformance with state law, which is governing. And we're in the process of doing that now through the executive director and working with all the employee unions and city management on those issues.
And are there major accomplishments that you like to point out from your first couple of terms on the board?
Not really. We haven't had any strikes. I guess that's good. At least none that I recall. No major strikes. I've often likened the board's function to that of a fire extinguisher. You hope that it stays on the wall and you don't have to use it. Our function is mainly to resolve disputes between labor management disputes between unions and city management. We have, I think, over the last several years, have created an atmosphere where there's we're sending fewer unfair practice charges to hearing and getting more resolution between the parties without having to go through the formal process. And I think that speaks well to the functioning of the current board.
I would agree. Colleagues, any comments or questions? If not, I will ask that we approve the mayor's recommendation without any opposition. And I'm going to ask, since he knows the rules well enough, that if Mr. Herman even attempts to come in, that you please remove him for already disrupting this meeting with his goat noises as usual. Thank you, and we will forward your appointment request to the full body.
Thank you, Council. Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, so number 8.
Item 8, Personnel Department report relative to the LA Well Program Employee Benefits Trust Fund review for fiscal year 2018-19.
Welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Stephen Montagna. I'm the Chief of the Benefits Division, here to represent the Personnel Department and the Joint Labor Management Benefits Committee. This is the annual report for the Employee Benefits Trust Fund for fiscal year 18-19, and the purpose of the report is simply to provide you with a review of the trust fund activity over the course of the last fiscal year. As we note in the report, this trust fund is used as the repository for all of the payments that go to pay for the expenses of the LA Well program. The information included in this report is particularly with the information that's in the attachments is in conformance with the recommendations of an independent auditor. There was an audit of the trust fund that was performed in 2016. That information was presented to the Joint Labor Management Committee, and they had recommended some certain changes as to the formatting and sort of the way that the information would be presented to them. So all that information is consistent. And the report reflects that the net balance in the trust fund as of the end of June 2019 was approximately $16.5 million. So with that as an introduction, I'm happy to take any questions.
So the real question for me is, how impactful has the program been, and have we actually been able to quantify whether it's done anything to improve health and wellness?
Are you talking about the wellness program specifically, or the LA Well program as a whole, which includes all of the benefits, health, dental, life, disability?
Probably the wellness program specifically.
Okay. Well, we still are very, very early in with our program, and in fact just recently launched our online platform. That was just a little over a month ago. But certainly we've been able to see the impact in terms of participation. So even prior to the online platform, we've seen growing participation in all of our activities, whether they're on-site vision exams or any of the clinics or classes or seminars that we offer. Being able to measure and sort of see the impact on population health with the wellness program over a period of time, that's much more difficult because there's so many variables that go in to that. Certainly in recent years we've had very low to zero changes in premium costs from our health plan carriers. It would be great to say that the wellness program can take credit for that. But I would also say that it's too early to really be able to draw that line between the two.
I know where some cities and some corporations have been able to easily quantify the progress has been when they've incentivized certain behaviors and actually given them a modest break on what they're paid as a result. So if you did these 10 things and it brought down the costs, you would split that with the employees that had followed through on the incentives, joining a gym, whatever the 10 items are that would by nature make the population healthier. I know the city's been resistant really to give that a look. Are we still not looking at that, or are we open to considering that?
Yeah, no, I think that the JLMBC is interested in exploring that. In fact, we had a recent discussion, and I think it was clear that it's a topic now that they'd like to look at. I think up to this point, the real focus has been on implementing what I would call the infrastructure of the program. So this whole idea of creating this on-site platform and creating this common tool to create community around wellness and a culture of wellness, that was really sort of the first order of business. Now that that's been created, I think there's an interest on the part of the JLNBC in looking at some of these other issues, like the use of incentives as part of being able to incorporate that as part of the program.
Well, you certainly can pass on the enthusiastic support for that, at least on my part. What's the reason for the difference in employee refunds between this year and last year? It seems to be a pretty big gap in what those were.
Well, there were refunds that we owed to employees. It was a pretty massive project that took many years for us to be able to do the calculations and be able to execute all the refunds to employees that were entitled, including both people that are currently working as well as people who were no longer working for the city but were also owed that. So we've actually been able to process most of those. So what you see reflected in the report is there's a smaller amount left for individuals that to this point we haven't been able to make contact with, but they'll continue to be held within the fund until such point as we're able to reach them and get them their refunds.
Very good. Other questions, comments, colleagues? If not, I would recommend that we note and file the report without objection. So that will be the order. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 9.
Item 9, City Attorney Report relative to fiscal year 2019-20 California Office of Traffic Safety Grant Award in connection with the Alcohol and Drug Impaired Driving Vertical Prosecution Program. This also has been referred to the Public Safety Committee.
Good afternoon, Sharon Lee from the Office of the City Administrative Officer. The City Attorney's Office requests authority to accept grant funding in the amount of $724,966 for the Alcohol and Drug Impaired Driving Vertical Prosecution Program for the grant performance period of October 1st, 2019 to September 30th, 2020. The grant will fund for 3 existing Deputy City Attorney 1 positions, and the City Attorney's Office is also requesting for 1 new Legal Assistant 1 Resolution Authority position, which the grant will also fund. The City Attorney's Office is also here to respond to any questions.
I wonder if you could give us a quick overview of the program and what those individuals would do.
Good afternoon. Jeanette Flintoff with the LA City Attorney's Office. These are vertical prosecutors who have subject matter experience in this complex area of the law related to impaired driving, both alcohol and drugs. They have undergone specialized training. They have close relationships within LAPD and the Highway Patrol to coordinate enforcement. With the issue of drug-impaired driving, they participated in a blue ribbon panel officiated by the California Office of Traffic Safety to make recommendations to kind of handle the emerging issue related to marijuana-induced driving. The challenge in this area is the lack of standardization to indicate when an individual is impaired, and this necessitates having somebody really have a deep background to recognize the different signs and symptoms, to look at the evidentiary attributes that a DRE may have obtained at the scene or through the toxicology reports, and be able to make a compelling and persuasive case for a conviction. Unfortunately, within Los Angeles, our jurors are prone to want that standardization that you see in alcohol, 0.08. We don't have anything equivalent. So really their persuasiveness is what helps kind of close the gap in trying to get these convictions and send the message that we will prosecute these cases.
And how long has this program been in place?
About 8 years. It was primarily alcohol oriented vertical prosecution, and with the emergence of legalized cannabis and the changes in the law with 23152 delineating the subsections for alcohol impaired, drug impaired, and combination alcohol drug impairment, they enhanced the program to encompass all of the impaired substances, alcohol and drugs.
So I'm not sure I got the answer, though. How long has this program been in place?
I'm sorry, about 8 years?
And is the funding different than it has been in previous years this time?
It has grown. We started, I think, with 1 prosecutor. We grew to 2 prosecutors. Now we're at 3. We're seeking legal assistance support for the prosecutors.
What's legal assistance support?
Legal assistance, that would be a new position to help with the discovery, collecting the toxicology reports, getting body-worn camera evidence. These are functions that the attorneys have been carrying out. So if this new support staff person can take over these functions, they're able to exclusively focus on the skills for which they're best suited.
Okay. The other
Will they be doing this under this grant then? Is it
We are seeking a legal
additional
assistant position.
person in addition to the 3?
Yes.
This grant will fund another person for that
Full
purpose?
cost recovery, yes.
And we've been receiving this amount roughly for the last several years of $700,000?
Absolutely, and continuation funding is expected. This is NHTSA funding that has been stable. Our office is consistently recognized as being the gold standard in this area. One of our attorneys, Farhad Kadam, has been recognized statewide for his efforts leading impaired driving prosecution enforcement. So we have no reason to believe that the funding will not be sustained over the long term.
Very good. No other comments, so we'll adopt the city attorney and CAO report recommendations without objection. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I believe our potential appointee under item number 1 is present, so why don't we call item number 1 again.
Communication for the Mayor and City Ethics Commission report relative to the appointment of Ms. Carla M. Gould to the Civil Service Commission for the term ending June 30th, 2022.
Welcome.
Any seat. Pick a seat, any seat. You choose.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. And why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you hope to accomplish on the Civil Services Commission?
Thank you. Well, I moved to Los Angeles when I was 17, and I am from a family of 10, and so I was just very anxious to get out on my own and kind of experience the world. And I've always had a disposition towards people at work and connecting people with jobs, and so the field of human resources was always something of interest to me. And I've been now in the field of human resources for the last 25 years or so. I'm currently the personnel director for the Los Angeles Unified School District. In that capacity, I oversee about 35,000 employees, the hiring, the selection, the salaries, the discipline, the disciplinary appeals, exam appeals, pretty much the HR aspects. And I've worked in other capacities with labor, with unions, and advocates of all types, employee advocates of all types, including attorneys in all HR type matters. So I feel like I've amassed a great deal of knowledge and understanding of the dynamics of people at work, and I believe in the principles of fairness and equity, and I know that people are of value to any organization, and so I hope to bring that field of knowledge and understanding, if I'm appointed, to the Civil Service Commission. And I believe I can be an asset because of, like I said, my passion for the work. I have an understanding. I've seen the type of work that the Civil Service Commission oversees, and I'm very much familiar with it. It's very similar to what I've been doing for the past 10 years or so. As far as the type of work, I understand it. And so just to bring my perspective in, I think would be of value to the city.
Anything else that you hope specifically to accomplish in your term?
I would hope to, and I did observe a Civil Service Commission meeting. I hopefully will observe another one to kind of just see the flavor of it. And so I'm hoping to bring the, the perspective, and so I know the compilation of it. I know who's on it and their perspectives. There are 3 attorneys, I believe, currently. So I'm hoping to bring that other perspective, the perspective of from an employer management perspective, as well as the advocacy perspective. I'm hoping to bring that balance, a little bit of that balance to it that I believe that I can offer from the vast experiences that I've had with employees. I mean, I realize the value of, for example, in disciplinary appeals, I realize the value of jobs to people, and so I hope, I want to bring that human perspective, and so I'm hoping to accomplish like more of a balance, what I believe would be a balance.
Colleagues, any questions? If not,
Well, let me just, first of all, thank you for stepping up to the plate and your willingness to serve.
Thank you.
Many of us remain concerned about the greater diversity, representativeness in the civil service branch. We want to make sure that all individuals have an opportunity to benefit from employment opportunities, even those with less experience, no experience. Trying to get them in where they are. And any thoughts about non-traditional approaches to civil service reform, or encouraging greater diversity in the workforce?
Absolutely. And so, one thing that we've looked at, for example, I think LA Unified very closely parallels the city of LA as far as diversity and the makeup and some of the issues that are related. And so one of the things we looked at, and I wanted to look at is what do we look like as an employer of 35,000, and does it reflect our community? And so some innovative ways that we've done there that I think we could emulate here. I think just for example, the millennials. We're looking at how to bring the millennials in, and they're a very small population in general in public employment, and for whatever there are reasons for that. But we don't want to miss out on that kind of talent, the new talent and the new ideas and new ways of looking at things. And so for the first time ever, we had a career day for our high school graduates to connect them and to let them know, about public service and the benefits of public service, and to give them some ideas, because for the most part, they've never heard of a lot of the jobs that we have to offer. For a school district, they're thinking teachers, and that's not all we are. So that's just an example of looking as far as diversity. That's the millennial, the age group diversity, looking at diversity of all types. I mean, I would be very interested in looking at what the current workforce looks like and how that compares to other industries. And then where are there gaps? How do we bring them in? I mean, I think right now, social media, I mean, there's all kinds of other ways to communicate and get the word out there. I think there's a lot of exciting things going on. I'm in the city. I know that, and I'm very well aware. But I think a lot of it is that we don't necessarily get our message to those people who aren't as connected. So finding ways to connect with them would be important.
I share your belief. Thank you.
Yeah.
I would love for you to pay special attention to our local hiring programs that we currently have in the city, because I think that is encouraging more people, some people who are not good at taking tests, and encouraging these young kids who actually learn on the job and providing these jobs to people who normally wouldn't apply for these positions. And so, and I think it's been a huge success. I think some of the departments have been kind of wary at first about the program, but I think it's shown we've had a less attrition rate with people coming through these programs, and I think it's a wonderful program. I hope you take a look at that and encourage more of that.
I would love to. Though that's the kind of thing that I'd be very, very excited to do. Absolutely. Like with internships, I know if the city has some internship opportunities. Those are good ways to match young typically, some of that group that wouldn't necessarily look at us, to give them a sampling of what it's like to work for the city.
And I think Mr. Lee was probably gentle in describing the hesitancy of some of our department heads. We really had to prod them, but I think people have found that through this program we actually wound up with some of our best and most enthusiastic employees. And hopefully we can expand it and maybe even expand it to the private sector as well.
I would love to be a part of that. Absolutely.
Any other comments? If not, I will ask that we approve the mayor's recommendation to appoint Ms. Gould to the Civil Service Commission. Thank you.
Thank
Congratulations.
you. Thank you.
Yes, congratulations. Thank you for your willingness to serve. All right, we're going to take up item number 10, and we'll begin with a public comment from Dan Gus on that item.
Item 10, Department of Animal Services report, response to adopted budget recommendation relative to instructing the Department of Animal Services to report to the PAW Committee regarding how many prosecutions that have been generated from the Animal Cruelty Task Force.
Council members, Daniel Gus, I write a column for City Watch. A few months ago, I filed a lawsuit, an actual lawsuit with an attorney, as opposed to small claims, over public records being withheld. This is a 6-year-old case of a chained dog, emaciated, covered with flies. Animal Services got there. They never prosecuted this, and Animal Services, and I'll email you this photo, Animal Services refuses to turn over the records. So when you're asking for them to report on animal cruelty on a property where people are, where you know who's involved, and then they don't turn over the records, what good is a report? I've brought this photo to this meeting for years. 6 years later, I'm still waiting for the record. I'm waiting for a bunch of PRAs. I'll email this to Mr. Koretz, and he can share that with you. Put this in the record. But what good is a report if this happens and nobody's arrested, nobody's tried, nobody's convicted? What good is a report if the information is garbage? Thank you. By the way, general comments still open on your kiosk.
Okay. Well, general comments have been closed, however. We could have a representative from the department.
Good afternoon. Karen Nipsher-Cox with LA Animal Services, Director of Field and Shelter Operations. So we reported back to you on the stats from the Animal Cruelty Task Force, but we also wanted to provide you the stats with the Animal Protection Unit, which is the unit that is within Animal Services itself. It's specialty officers that we have trained and work directly with the City Attorney's Office to prosecute cases. And as you can see from the list that I gave you, the stats are pretty good for the last few years, and they keep increasing. So between the report for the Animal Cruelty Task Force and the report for Animal Protection Unit, I think that they speak for themselves, that the stats are pretty good and that we are moving forward and we're getting better and better.
Why did it take so long to send this report to council?
That I can't answer. I was given it, I did it right away, and I returned it to my supervisor.
I wonder if you could report back to us, first of all, on Dan Gus's issues, because he has reported a number of cases that appear to clearly be animal cruelty, and yet has not heard a response and any indication that we've taken up any of those cases or prosecuted them.
Okay, I know when they put in a records request, it does go to the custodian of records, and they process each and every one. I see them all the time. I can personally look into Daniel Gus's if he wants to send me the list, and I can go to the custodian of records and ask her where those are.
So after this item, maybe you two can connect and actually, and that would be not just his CPRA request, but the actual
Cases.
issue and cases and
Okay.
where they stand.
Absolutely.
The cases provide you with any suggested opportunities to prevent these kinds of cases from happening in the future? Anything that the department learned from them?
We've learned a lot. Between the ACTF and ourselves, we've become a better bonded unit. We're working more closely together. They pick up more of the cases where it starts out as a domestic violence case and it ends up with an animal involved. They step in. We're taking all the cases that are called into our office or emailed into our office. We've been taking all of those so that they are all addressed. We did learn that we had some confusion where people were filing it with them and not knowing why we weren't doing anything about it. And it was because we didn't have the case, they had the case, and vice versa. So we made a very clear line, and we share information all the time. So I think we've improved on that.
And do we have a good tracking system of these cases? Because I know, while Mr. Gus may be the most vocal, I know there are other folks that have said they've put in complaints about animal cruelty that they've witnessed and not heard back that things were prosecuted.
Every case is entered into our Chameleon system. It's our system that the whole department uses for everything.
Hang on one second. Mr. Spin, I'll give you one warning about talking. We closed general public comment, but anyway, I don't need to dialogue with you. You're disrupting the meeting. One more word and you're out. Any word. Go back to your testimony. He's out. Thank you.
You want to do this?
Take him out, please.
It's not a lawful order. Where's my cards?
It was closed before you got here.
You let Dan Gus sign up late. Why I signed up? Now, why didn't I get called on item 10?
Didn't see you on item 10.
Let's take a look. Okay, let's go. Let's look.
Your name's not there. It didn't register.
Oh, it didn't, huh? Wait for Messina?
It's not there.
Did it?
Still not there.
Oh, you sure?
I can show it to you. You're not there.
Let's see it. Let's see it. He's talking to me. Can I speak? Putting a hand on me, you're assaulting me. No, all this is speaking to me.
Show it to him outside. Please have him escorted out.
Yeah. When you don't call my account, how come you call it? You know why? Because Dan just sued your fucking ass. He got an attorney to sue your fucking ass.
Just for the record, Mr. Gus's request is on this computer. Yours is non-existent.
I'm sorry, Mr. Kretz, can you repeat the question?
I don't remember where we were.
That was a little nervous.
Oh, how to follow up on other similar complaints and whether we have a good tracking system now.
So, and every case gets an identifier through that system. And officers are issued that investigation, they conduct their investigation, and they either file it with the APU, which is the Animal Protection Unit, to further along the case if it's a high priority, or if it's a simple case, the officers handle it themselves and move forward and close the case. And anybody that calls can get the records, and anybody that calls, we explain to them. We can only talk about so much without them getting the records through our custodian. But we can tell them that the case is closed and what the reason being was. That, they provided the medical proof, or they got the doghouse, or whatever the case may be. We can always close those and move forward. And we can tell them those simple information, but the rest of it obviously has to go through the custodian of records.
And do we do much education on animal cruelty? Does the general public know that this is a crime, etc.?
Our public relations actually just put out another PR press release for animal cruelty just last week, actually. And so we do have a new PR person, and he has been putting stuff out, yes.
Any other questions? Mr. Price.
Thank you. This is a very interesting breakdown. Thank you for finally providing it. I'd also like to know, though, where these incidents are, where they're taking place in the. How many divisions does the Bureau have?
6.
6. Yeah. If you give us a breakdown of where these cases are coming from.
Yes.
That would be very helpful.
I'll add that to the report, sir.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, I'll ask that we note and file this report without objection. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so item number 11.
Item 11, city attorney reports and ordinances relative to amending Los Angeles Municipal Code to regulate the exhibition of a wild, exotic, or dangerous animal in the city and amending Los Angeles Municipal Code Section 53.50 to update animal permit regulations.
And we have one speaker from the public, a Reaper Corey.
What item are we on?
We're on item number 11.
Item 11. Okay, so, Corey Schmidt for the record. This item is regarding exotic, wild, dangerous animals and keeping them in check, basically. So I think I agree with this. I think that it should be okay for people to own animals like this if they want, but they need to be on private property or some sort of, away from the public, because wouldn't want any of these wild, dangerous animals to attack anybody. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Yeah, so they'll have to go down the line, just start calling names. I mean, 'cause this is obviously
Also, I believe Wendy Birch and Catherine Doyle may want to speak on this item. Are they either of them present? Welcome.
Have a seat.
Okay, I have you under item number 1 instead of 11, but that's fine. That's obviously just a typo.
Someone else too, over here.
Oh, you're also listed under item number 1, but that's fine. Must be a computer glitch, so come on up.
Okay, my name is Catherine Doyle, and I'm the Director of Science, Research, and Advocacy for the Performing Animal Welfare Society. This ordinance started off addressing circuses and house parties with exotic animals and has morphed into permit requirements for exotic animal exhibitions. I've been involved in this type of permitting in LA through the years, and as written, the ordinance is not even as effective as permitting requirements approved by the Board of Animal Services back in 2008. PAWS, the Humane Society of the United States, and the PETA Foundation have submitted a joint letter proposing changes to the draft language, which contains loopholes, overbroad language, terms that require definition, and fails to effectively protect the animals or the public. For example, the ordinance needs to define legitimate conservation and education programs, provide additional standards to qualify or disqualify a permit applicant, and clearly define dangerous animals. You can see our letter. I brought more copies for our proposed changes, and I hope that you'll work with us to strengthen this ordinance so we can fully support it. And these are 3 organizations that represent tens of thousands of supporters here in Los Angeles. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Diana Mendoza here for PETA. We strongly support banning wild animals in entertainment, but this draft undermines that goal. Specifically, the ordinance would jeopardize animals and the public by allowing the use of dangerous animals in so-called conservational or educational presentations. This includes traveling shows with big cats, bears, elephants, and great apes. No legitimate education program uses these animals for traveling exhibits. It's simply too dangerous. But many circus trainers now bill their acts as educational shows specifically to get around ordinances like this one, yet the cruelty and risks are just as high. For example, a former Ringling Brothers tiger trainer who rebranded her show as an educational exhibit violently whipped a tiger in front of terrified kids at a fair when the tiger attacked her. Dangerous animals should not be eligible for off-site exhibits. PETA asks that you make this and the other changes proposed in the letter we submitted with PAWS and HSUS. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Leslie McCabe for Animal Defenders International, who supports item 161357 to prohibit the use of wild and exotic animals for entertainment in Los Angeles, with thanks to the committee and to the sponsor, Councilman Rue. With particular expertise on this issue, ADI's ongoing studies highlight the abuse, deprivation and suffering inflicted on animals used for this purpose. In support of the unanimous Council motion to draft this measure in 2017, ADI provided extensive data of the inherent animal welfare issues as well as public safety risks. Forced to perform unnatural tricks, their mental and physical health inevitably compromised, animals used in entertainment endure subjugation, deprivation and violence to make them conform. Wherever ADI has conducted investigations of animal suppliers with documented acts of abuse. For travelling acts, the constant travel and temporary and inadequate facilities makes it impossible to provide for the needs of the animals. In consideration of this evidence, ADI urges the committee to vote yes to item 161357 to protect both animals and citizens of Los Angeles. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for your testimony. Oh, actually, sorry, I have two more. I'm assuming that everybody that is listed as speaking under item 1 is under 11. So I'll ask if Justin Orenstein is here to speak on this item and Dan Gus to speak on this item.
Good afternoon, and thank you for affording me the opportunity to make a few brief remarks. My name is Justin Ornstein, and I'm the Policy Director for Los Angeles City Council Member David Rue. First, I'd like to express the Council members' appreciation to the Chair for scheduling this item, and of course to the members of this committee for your consideration of the ordinance before you. The ordinance is a long time coming and well overdue. The Council member in our office began working on this issue over 3 years ago when we were alerted to an incident in which a young elephant and giraffe were being paraded up steep concrete streets in the Hollywood Hills to be exhibited at a house party. Needless to say, we were incensed at the lack of care and consideration shown for both the animals and the public in this instance. Since then, we've worked locally with many of the advocates in this room, the City Attorney's Office, the Department of Animal Services, and members of the state legislature to address the problem. And we've moved the collective needle in Sacramento with the passage of SB 313, which I'd like to thank Councilmember Koretz for your efforts, advocacy, and leadership on. But this ordinance goes a step further by banning the exhibition of wild, exotic, or dangerous animals for entertainment purposes throughout the city, no matter the venue or function. There are, of course, exemptions built into the ordinance for educational or conservation purposes, and the film industry, which has by and large acted with the utmost care toward animals, will continue to be able to operate under the permitting process laid out in the ordinance. But the ordinance strikes a good balance by banning the exhibition of animals for entertainment purposes, by ensuring for the welfare and humane treatment of these animals as well as the safety of the public, while also ensuring that it's effective and enforceable. With that said, I'd like to once again extend the Council members' thanks for your consideration of the ordinance before you, dated August 23rd, 2019, and urge the committee to approve the item. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Daniel.
And why don't you stick around because I may have a question or two for you.
Yeah, hi, Daniel Gus. You may want to look over at Universal Studios where they have a live, for-profit, wild and exotic animal exhibition at Universal. One of my neighbors was a trainer there. And when you're talking about that definition, I appreciate anything that would help animals, but consider that every one of those adjectives applies to the zoo, and that you should really reconsider the goal of the zoo, which I don't consider educational whatsoever. I consider it as exploitative. Lastly, council members, I'm going to submit to you, because PRAs are a problem here also, I'm going to submit to you a 5-year-old PRA, which has never been filled, despite what Captain Nipscher said. I'm going to give you a copy of a 5-year-old PRA that would take all of 30 seconds to have honored. So, not honoring PRAs, they have not been done. 30 seconds it would have taken, it's 5.5 years old. Thank you.
And I presume you've passed that on to the representative today who you talked to, right?
Today? Oh, to Karen?
Yeah.
Absolutely. You have a copy of it also.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. So now we could have the city attorney. Oh, I am sorry. I have one more speaker that's popped up, Reaper Corey. Well, not in the room, so I will move on from that. Now the city attorney can speak.
Thank you, Councilman. My name is Dov Lassell. I'm an assistant city attorney. As Justin said, this has been a long time coming. We've worked over the years, and it really has been years, with stakeholders, if you will, on both sides of the aisle. And as Justin summarized nicely, this ordinance addresses not only the motion, but also gives the department the flexibility it needs, while at the same time regulating and prohibiting circuses, prohibiting animal acts, prohibiting animals from coming up to party houses, and puts into place a rigorous system of permits that the department is willing and able to enforce, including, for instance, Catherine's letter with PAW indicated that 10 calendar days was not enough and it should be 14 days. I talked to Brenda and Karen. The department has no problem with 10 calendar days. The department is in agreement with this motion and feels that they will be able to carry it out as City Council directed.
What's the difference as a practical matter between the 10 days and the 14 days?
What the ordinance says is, again, the idea is to
and
make
maybe I
this,
should have you also describe the permitting process that would be created.
The permitting
in more
process
detail.
is really divided into a couple of different pieces, if you will. So the main difference in this ordinance is that for any use of a wild and dangerous animal, that must be only for educational or conservation purposes. As Justin said, that's across the board. And an entity or a company can get an annual permit just like they can now. The difference is that now that annual permit, you could use that animal for anything, and under the ordinance, the use of that animal is limited to educational or conservation purposes. We have a separate section of dangerous animal that is different from just wild and exotic. The dangerous animal is a short list that was essentially copied from the federal government. One exception being that we took out camel and we inserted giraffe. But otherwise, it tracks the federal government definition of dangerous animals. For a dangerous animal, any kind of a presentation, in addition to being for educational and conservation purposes, the permit itself will be limited to the time, place, location, so that the department in that 10-day period will get all of the information it needs. And I think that the department has been in this business long enough where it can discern whether that the information the application has in it the controls that are necessary for public safety, for the humane treatment and transportation of the animals, that the location is suitable, and they have the ability to discuss this with any of the other city departments, including fire, police, building and safety, etc. And then thirdly, for filming, that will also be limited to time, place, but that's always been the case. And as Justin pointed out, there's never been an issue in filming with wild or dangerous animals. And so the department is very comfortable with the way these permits will be rolled out.
And the difference as a practical matter between 10 days and 14 days?
The 10 days is at least 10 10 working days. So we're already looking at 14 days effectively.
But,
and it's at least that. So if the department...
But as a practical matter, why not give more time? Why not make it 14 days?
The reason we settled on 10 was after discussion with a number of the stakeholders and the concern for a number of the rental agencies especially was that oftentimes they get requests for 5 days down the road. Some of them sent emails in asking for a shorter time period. And the idea was to balance a reasonable period of time to allow the rental agencies to do business, assuming that the business is consistent with the ordinance. And we have the words "at least" in there. So if the department feels that it needs more time, it will have the discretion to ask for more time.
So if the department's struggling to figure out an issue, it's not going to be jammed because of the, the time.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, my big question is there's several organizations that had questions about things that could be changed, loopholes, etc., in the ordinance, and none of them seem wildly out of line. So if we move this forward, is there a way to address that through the ordinance?
We can meet with Catherine and PETA and whoever else, I think the HSUS that involved in that letter, but we're comfortable that the way this is written addresses the council motion and provides the city with what was requested. It gives the department a certain amount of flexibility, but the definitions are clear. They don't need to go into such great detail. The detail is what the department can do in the regulations, and this ordinance allows it to do regulations. It gives the general manager a certain amount of discretion, which they can then publish in terms of this is how the application should look. This is the information that we need. And so some of the concerns that Diane and Catherine had were that we need to focus on the transportation. We need to focus on this and on this. This allows the department to request as much specific information as they need to make a determination. We're happy to meet with them. And we have been. I mean, we've been talking to them over the last 2 or 3 years. I personally am very happy to meet with them. I've known Catherine for many years, and we're all basically on the same page, which is we want to make sure that both the public and the animals will be safe.
I mean, it sounds pretty close. I just don't want to have had the council member work on this for 3 years and then wind up with something that easily could be done so that there's a consensus when there's still a few issues outstanding. So the question is, do we pass it and leave it to the general manager to smooth out, or do we just continue this till the next PA meeting and in the meantime have a last set of meetings to try and nail down the last few items?
Our office's recommendation would be to accept this and move it forward. We believe that this ordinance addresses, including all of the issues raised in that letter from PA and PETA.
I was just going to ask, and you obviously have the same thought. You obviously have the same thought as I do. What do you think about whether we get to where we want to be?
I think it's easy to get there.
Identify yourself,
Oh,
Valerie.
yes. Valerie Flores, Senior Assistant City Attorney. We drafted the ordinance as a broad framework, knowing that the department would need the discretion to add definitions, request additional information, depending on a case-by-case basis. So there's actually a provision in the ordinance that allows and designates to the general manager of the department the discretion to be able to add the details to the broad framework of the ordinance. So we think the ordinance is fine as is. and that, with time and working with the various organizations, the general manager can develop any additional information for the application and add new definitions if necessary. But there is a bit of a concern that we get something on the books, the broad framework of the ordinance on the books, because, again, we're trying to prevent cruelty to animals in dangerous situations involving house parties and other unpermitted activities with dangerous animals. So, again, I think the department, and I know Dove from our office, is willing to meet with the different animal rights groups to make sure that the ultimate permit process and the definitions are agreeable to all concerned. But it shouldn't hold up the ordinance, which again was purposely drafted as a broad framework and not, a very specific item by item account of every possible thing the general manager might want.
Well, I don't want to hold this up much because it's been a work in progress for years, but if we could continue this and ask for one more set of meetings with the advocacy groups before this comes out of committee. So hopefully you can do that before the next PA meeting, and we'll bring that back and have that one last set of conversations. Any other comments before we dismiss this item from members? If not, that would be my suggestion without objection. And now if we could adjourn the regular meeting and go into the special meeting.
Just a minute.
Special meeting yet.
Call their names.
They all left.
All right, first we'll start with public comment. And I'm not sure who are still here, but the names are Red Chief, Sandra Blame, Corey Schmidt, Dan, Armando Herban, Reaper Corey, and Wayne from Encino. Any of those folks present and or wish to speak? Appears nobody is present. I'd like to ask that we take items 1 through 4 on consent. If there are no objections, ask that we approve item number 1 through 4 without objection. And is there anything else before us?
That clears the desk.
So we are adjourned.